Hello and welcome to another update video about Bitcoin. Bitcoin around 43.7k again is struggling to get back above 44k. So not really a lot has happened since my last update earlier today. We have hit in the last day, I think, various of the target levels that I gave you for the correction. At least the minimum correction levels have been reached for, I particularly checked Solana, particularly checked VeChain. I haven't checked many of the others, but I need to do that still. But so far, yeah, we're coming down. We have come down in a correction, not a crash at all. This is a typical correction that you see in the crypto market. It is a volatile space. We know that, and we expected a correction, a short-term correction here for many of the altcoins and also for Bitcoin, as it struggled to push through this 200-day moving average here. So at the moment, Bitcoin is coming closer and closer to this very important support level here. So if I go to the 4-hour chart, that 42.7k level, very important support in last video. Now let me go to the 1-hour chart. Let's go to the 1 hour. In the last video, it looked a bit like Bitcoin was doing here another bearish pennant. Now that obviously did not break out to the upside. As always, they don't need to break out, to the downside. As always, they don't need to break out necessarily. They can also be fake outs or move in the other way. So this did not work out bearish. This in the end worked out, well, I wouldn't call it yet bullish. We are moving up. We see a nice green candle here to the upside at the moment, but we have not yet broken above the previous resistance here at 43.9k. So this candle here from 40, where did we go down to? From around 43.3 to 43.8, 43.9 is quite large. Yeah, we've seen here one here and another one here. So that is looking interesting, starting to look interesting again. But there are a few important levels we now need to watch out for. So in this downside scenario here, we've got the 42.7k level. That is very important. If we drop below that, I think significant downside potential is there. And then I would go back to the previous primary scenario again, and not without reason. The current scenario here is only, or was originally only, the alternative. So this is the scenario. So the alternative, which is now the primary, sorry if it's a bit confusing, it obviously changes. We typically always have a bullish and a bearish scenario, or at least, yeah. And these become either primary scenario or alternative scenario when certain resistance or support levels that are very important structurally for the chart or in terms of the Elliott Wave count, if these levels get crossed, and only then we can change the scenario and go from a primary one to an alternative one and so on. And this current scenario that you see on the chart here, where we go up first into this green target range, or at least 51k would be the minimum that we would need to do in this scenario, to go up into this region and then come down. This has become active as the price broke above 45.8k, above that W wave here in the beginning of February. Now we broke above that here recently, and that activated the that made the previous alternative scenario to the primary scenario. And in this scenario, we now have more space to move higher. However, it has not worked out yet, and the price has so far stayed below the 200-day moving average. As we saw difficulties up here for the price to break through, I told you that we might be turning around here, which we did, but so far I still primarily expect the price to move into this area, basically because we are still above that 42.7k level. If we break below this important level, then the previous or originally primary scenario becomes active again, which would trigger the immediate sell-off into this range here between 20 and 29k. So don't get me wrong, in both scenarios we are going to end in this area, in my opinion, but the question is, how do we get there? Yeah, and without a crystal ball, nobody will be able to tell you that. We can only go by probabilities, and again, it is very difficult here in this current channel in which Bitcoin is to work out what is now really going to happen, because there hasn't really been a clear breakout yet. The 200-day moving average has been restricting Bitcoin's movement to the upside. But I think primarily still, as long as we don't drop below that 42.7k level, that we're going to see some more upside, before we then eventually come down. That would also tie in with my S&P 500 analysis that I showed you yesterday in the Bitcoin video, and that I also have published on my second channel, and the link for that you can find in the video description. So that would tie in very nicely with that, which would assume, by the way, that the S&P 500 would now go up into a new swing high before it will see a more significant correction, and that could then trigger that last final sell-off capitulation for Bitcoin. So yeah, to the downside, that 42.7k level is the important one that I'm looking at here. We're currently coming up. It's too early to say if this was already the low. What we can certainly see here on the 8-hour chart, that we reacted quite significantly to that 42.7k level. And that is a good sign in terms of, yeah, we find support here and move higher. But also on the 8-hour chart, what we might do, we might just retest here this resistance box, which was formerly support, which might now become resistance, or is now resistance, of course. But if we retest that, that could trigger another sell-off, and that would be at 44.2k. So this is a level we need to get through to complete further upside, to go higher. This is the next important resistance at 44.2k. Generally, why do I expect the price still to go into that lower region? A lot of people still don't believe it. It's basically just purely how markets typically behave. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but it for me is the most likely scenario to get into this target area, because Bitcoin has not completed its correction, in my opinion. Yeah, various altcoins have reached their individual target areas, which means they have completed the minimum requirements for a correction. Bitcoin so far hasn't done that yet. In such a correction here, and you have your A, B, C wave, typically in a correction in the most simple way. And also here on the Bitcoin chart, you can see the wave A, which is when the correction started, actually in April last year. So the correction has taken nearly a year now, or even a year. We have then come back in a wave B, which was a new all-time high, but still part of that correction. And we are now in the wave C, in my opinion, which is still part of that correction. But in a wave C, you very, very often come lower than the wave A low. This doesn't have to happen, but in a higher level correction, as Bitcoin is doing at the moment, it is very, very, very likely that we come down once more into this region. And therefore, because we have to assume probabilities here, we have to look at probabilities. This is what I'm looking at here. And also, the price has not created an impulsive move to the upside yet. So if you get your first 5-wave move up, really, then we can still add another target level to the chart, because after that you would get another correction. But so far we haven't seen an impulse yet, which means that Bitcoin is only correcting currently to the upside, which would mean that we come down once more. And a lot of people always say, right, but if you make that lower low, then we're going to go into a bear market. But why would we? We've seen various examples in the chart histories of lower lows, and these have not led to a clear bear market. I mean, just look at the this is just a cutout or a snapshot of the S&P 500, and you've seen here also just one example, but you can find it time and time again, not only on the S&P 500 chart, but it's also always a very nice one to show, because it so clearly shows what Bitcoin is doing here at the moment as well. So we came up, completed an impulsive move. We came down in a low, made a higher high, and made a lower low, and then we started the rocket. And that is what I'm looking for Bitcoin at the moment, waiting for that lower low to then start that rocket ship. And this is where Bitcoin is struggling with at the moment, and this is called a so-called expanded flat. You can see that here on the screenshot where you have, or on the image here, where you made a wave 1, you're coming down in a wave A. This is what we did last year in June, July for Bitcoin. We then made a higher wave B, which is what we did in November, and the next wave, a 5-wave move to the downside, which is what we're looking at here at the moment, is here that 5th wave, or a wave 2 of higher degree, coming down, making a lower low before the next move up starts. That is the most likely corrective pattern here that we're looking at the moment. There's a so-called running flat where we don't need to make that lower low, but it is very unlikely. And even if it happens, it normally only happens in markets, not in a wave 2. In my opinion, this is a wave 2, and also not in such a higher level wave correction. So again, don't have the crystal ball. It doesn't need to happen, but it's very, very likely. And at the moment, one reason I believe we are still going to go lower is because we have not seen yet this capitulation in the market. So a lot of people still remained very, very bullish when we moved down to 33k here back in January. this was still too bullish, you normally need to see that sense of capitulation. That is what typically happens at this stage here when we make that lower low. A last significant move down where a lot of people give up, or the weak hands are shaken out of the market, and that is when prices can continue to go up. At the moment, we haven't seen that yet. Everything that is still coming up here in this channel, it looks so corrective. This does not look bullish at all, in my opinion. So yeah, this is what we're looking at here. So hopefully you liked the update. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe. And if you really like the content, then check out the channel membership. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.